I think Jeffrey just found a new bell and whistle, didn't you?
Yes.
Always fun. Technology can be frustrating, but also rewarding when you find those little tiny things. So you've all just heard this meeting is being recorded. Oh, we have to continue. Do we have to hit the button?
Click on the
Yeah.
continue.
Okay.
Yeah.
So good afternoon. Welcome to the May 26th meeting of the Intergovernmental Cooperation Authority for Harrisburg. I'm very excited to welcome our newest board member, Carla Hodge, today. She is the appointee of Senator Costa, and we've been waiting a long time for you. Professionally, Carla works for AFSCME Council 13, where she serves as the Assistant Executive Director, and she lives in the city of Harrisburg. Thank you, Carla, for being willing to join the team. It will be a fun time, I promise you. I think we've all had a chance to welcome Carla individually, and you see Dan now on the screen, who is the ex officio from the city of Harrisburg, and Mark is the representative from the office of the Pennsylvania Office of the Budget. Next on the agenda is the approval of minutes, which I hope everyone has had a chance to review. And if so, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the minutes for the monthly meeting of the ICA for April 28th, 2021.
So moved, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Kathy. A second?
Second.
Thanks, Doug. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I'll ask if there was any discussion. Sorry. I'm assuming. Okay, so did everyone vote? Aye. Oh, okay. Motion carries. Sorry, Jeffrey. Jeffrey, could I call on you to give a report on the finances and the address of the organization?
Sure. 1 second. Let me just bring up my bills paid report. I think everyone on the board has had a chance to see this. This is the report as of May 26. There was 6 invoices paid in this period. You will note that we renewed our general liability insurance policy, which is one of our 2 insurance policies that the ICA carries. That was our annual renewal. And we had a starting balance at the beginning of the period in the bank account of $116,612.41. And we have completed this monthly period with a sizable balance of $109,000 even and 37 cents. So we're still over $100,000 in fund balance as we approach June of this fiscal year. So it's interesting to keep note. And there is interest earnings year to date of $6.07. Thank you to FNB Bank for that. Anybody has any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, that's the financial report. I think the second thing that the chair has asked me to report on is our ongoing conversion to our new legal address. And it has gone very well this month. The vast majority of our vendors have now converted over to our new address, which is 922 North 3rd Street, which is the shared office space known as Startup Harrisburg. And I've never been there in person. I promised them I would stop by shortly. They have a very competent staff at Startup Harrisburg, and Emily, who is one of the 3 office managers at the facility, has begun to open and scan our U.S. mail as it arrives at the facility and email it to me the same day that it arrives from the post office, which is an incredibly efficient system. So thank you to Emily at Startup Harrisburg for that. And then I'm going to use this opportunity, if it would be okay, Madam President, to raise the issue of, which was raised to me moments before the meeting began, of our future in-person meetings. And if you want, I think Anna Marie can expound on this, but the thought is at some point in the not too distant future, the governor is probably going to voluntarily or involuntarily lift the emergency order that is currently impacting all government agencies, including ours. And as such, we would have to return to in-person meetings. Is that my understanding, Anne Marie? Is that your understanding?
Yeah, that's my understanding. As I understand it, the act that was passed that permits this function, meaning a Zoom meeting for a municipal or any sort of government or municipal meeting, is specifically contingent upon the continued existence of the governor's emergency declaration. So the governor has re-upped the emergency declaration. There's this whole issue about what was the impact of the most recent election. Greater minds than mine can fight that one out, but sooner or later, probably sooner, the emergency declaration is going to be discontinued. And I suspect that we're going to get caught in the crosshairs because we will have advertised a meeting to occur as a Zoom meeting and the declaration will have discontinued. And so we would theoretically have to re-advertise and have a public meeting. So I'm just hopeful that everybody kind of keeps.
She went away.
She just muted herself. You muted yourself, Anna Marie.
Isn't that peculiar? I did not. But nonetheless, the dates are an issue and we're going to have to watch because we might get caught sideways in terms of advertising for one type of meeting and then having to re-advertise to hold a second type of meeting.
We advertise these public meetings, including today's meeting. We do it on a very short schedule.
Notice, I think you should, that's good.
Yeah, so we basically advertise the Sunday before the meeting. So for example, this past Sunday, our advertisement appeared in the Harrisburg Patriot News. So we're good, unless it happens 24 hours or.
Yeah, I think they're probably going to, if they're smart about it, they're going to put some kind of a lead time on it. They're going to say it ends, effective X sometime in the future.
So there's basically two options, and we've talked in the past about these two options, and obviously we defer to the board's wisdom. In the past, before the COVID health emergency, we were meeting in person at Temple University in Strawberry Square. That's where our in-person meeting site was. I had developed a relationship with the facility manager there. They were not charging us for use of a classroom once a month, which was very nice for them to do. They actually did that, I believe, at the request of the building owner. But they were able to give it to us gratis, which is terrific. And as you recall, we do have, and one of the things we've discussed in the past as an alternative, is we have the ability to use the large conference room at Startup Harrisburg. Now, that won't be gratis. They do charge a fee for that, a per hour rate. And I haven't investigated that, to great lengths, only because I didn't know this was coming. But I'd be happy if the board would like to look further into the potential of meeting at Startup Harrisburg, although, like I said, that probably won't be free. So I don't know if the board has any opinion one way or the other.
I think options are always good. So if you explore it, the other complication with Temple might be depending on whether or not the institution requires vaccinations. That would be another subtle layer that would come up on that. So I don't know what else there is. We could always see if there are others, but I think we can talk more offline about that. I think it's good to know that that is coming and could come quickly. And
just as an aside, I think that it is at least possible, if not probable, that the legislature may take up the issue, because I know a lot of the municipal entities have expressed a real desire to continue this, even if it's only in part. In other words, some of the municipalities I represent are saying, look, we will all meet together, but we would like to continue to be able to offer the option of a Zoom meeting because it's so much more conducive for public participation. People don't have to leave their house and trudge to a meeting. They can log right in and still participate. So there might be some legislative action in the meantime as well.
We could consider the technical ability of do that. I mean, in essence, I would use my laptop as you're seeing right now. And I would, could, for example, hook up an external camera and the board could be in person with me and I could still manage the rest of the people on Zoom who wouldn't be in person, but could participate in the meeting. So something to consider.
Doug had something to say.
Yeah, two things. First, I am presuming that both of the facilities that we're looking at for the in-person meeting have handicap accessibility, which is a requirement. Second point, and this is relative to the board itself, and Anna Marie, I don't know if, I'm not going to ask you to comment on the spot, but I don't believe either the statute or the abandonment of the executive order affects the milk marketing board case that says members of an agency can attend virtually and still be a valid participant in the meeting. And the only reason I'm raising that, I'm participating today from Pittsburgh, and I can envision circumstances where that might occur, and we might still need to do that for members of the board.
Sure. Certainly, if we have a hybrid option, then that would still remain a possibility to do so.
Great food for thought. We will keep everyone posted. Thank you, Jeffrey, for that report, and thanks, Anna Marie, for bringing that issue up. What a difference a month makes. Since our last meeting, we have submitted our annual report to the governor and legislative leaders. We talked about that a little bit at our last meeting. The report is mandated under Act 124, and we affectionately call it our Section 203 report. The act requires us or requests that we submit an annual review of the city's financial condition and the progress it's made over the past year. Thank you to everyone on the board for submitting input and advice during its development. And thank you to Jeffrey for bringing it home for the final leg. It is available on our website to anyone who would like to review it. Just last week, it seems like longer ago, we had a primary. And during that primary, we saw or learned of the defeat of the incumbent mayor and the primary win by Wanda Williams, the current president of City Council. We look forward to a productive and engaged final stretch of the current administration and an active engagement with the next administration. We also welcome 2 new members to City Council, Ralph Rodriguez and Jocelyn Rawls, and welcome the re-election of Asha Green and Shemaine Daniels. We have reached out to all the new members, welcoming and congratulating them, and look forward to talking to them and making sure everyone knows the work of the ICA and that we are here to help them in any way that we can. Jeffrey has been coordinating closely with the city and Dan Connolly specifically as the city finalizes its submission of its 2021 5-year financial plan. Begins to feel a little bit like Groundhog Day because I know we just went through this less than 2 months ago. But here we got ourselves into that predicament because of COVID and several delays. Dan's going to talk a little bit about that in a second, and then the board will take an opportunity to discuss next steps relative to that. And as we all remember, we gave the approval to the 2021, sorry about that, that's my noise, 2020 report with the condition that certain new information and expanded information would be addressed in the 2021 plan. And that's why we were all very grateful to learn that Jeffrey was going to be working closely with Dan so that that communication could be open and free flowing. That is all I have to say as part of the chair's report. And I'd now like to turn the floor over to Dan.
Sure, Audrey, thanks. I'll just make a few brief remarks. The city was very pleased to deliver that plan that you just referenced at the end of last month. It's a plan that demonstrates the city's ability to balance budgets, maintain sufficient fund balances, and increase spending on capital needs. And even before the American Rescue Plan Act funds were received, the city got about $23.5 million just very recently. Even before those funds came in, the city had a stronger operating outlook than it has in anyone's recent memory. It's a remarkable turnaround from almost 10 years ago or so, when the city first encountered fiscal distress, overwhelming debt, severe structural imbalance. It's a totally different city today. But even aside from like 10 years ago, it's incredible to think about where the city was exactly 1 year ago and where it is now. A year ago, we were in the middle of a self-imposed shutdown to stem COVID-19, of course. Local economic activities slowed to a crawl, which had a direct impact on operating revenues, not just in Harrisburg, but in every municipality across the country. And it's tough to imagine a situation with more uncertainty. On top of that, we had the existing challenges of a revenue cliff that was looming out, 3 or 4 years out. In the time that I've spent working with the city, I didn't hear any realistic solution to cover a $12 to $13 million operating revenue gap in the budget. So May of 2021 versus May 2020, a lot different. The plan that was submitted on April 30th showed an operating surplus in 2020. The city was able to secure the extension of the earned income tax and local services tax taxing powers. And we were able to restart negotiations with key creditors that had stalled during COVID because of the uncertainty and not knowing what the city would be required to do with this cash position. And now the city's in position to restructure debt that will save the taxpayers millions of dollars in the future. So as you mentioned, Audrey, we received the ICA's comments on the plan. We appreciate your feedback. We can make the cleanup edits, a lot of clarifications in pretty short order. Of course, there is a new administration coming on board in the new year. So, we'll probably leave the policy matters and questions, including the correspondence, more to them. But turning around a revised document in advance of next month's meeting is very doable. But again, the city is very proud of the progress that it's made in recent years, and feel like fiscal distress is going to be in the rearview mirror, and the full recovery is what's ahead. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Audrey.
Thank you, Dan. Are there any questions of Dan relative to perhaps comments that we might have made? And Dan, you did clarify with your addition of the submission that this was a draft that you had issued, and so the clock hadn't officially started. We tried to turn it around as quickly as possible. So once we're in receipt of the full complement of information and certification, we would get going and hopefully be able to turn it around at the June board meeting. So any questions from my colleagues, comments?
May I ask, Dan, are there any updates on any of the initiatives underway, including some of the refinancing activities and any of the other stuff, such as the establishment of the OPEB trust? Any updates in the last month that you could give us?
Sure. As far as the refinancing goes, one of the requirements, authorization requirements that we needed and we were able to secure was through the Harrisburg Redevelopment Authority, who was the issuer of the stadium bonds, even though the city was the guarantor and in fact making debt service payments recently. Since we needed the issuer's approval, we secured that at a board meeting 2 weeks ago. I think May 18th was that. I think right before our last meeting, we engaged an underwriter, and council had passed the MBAC settlement agreement. So I don't know if that's an update or not, but those are two big milestones that the city was able to reach. And now we're going to be moving forward with the financing process, developing a credit rating presentation, hopefully securing a credit rating, moving towards the financing itself later this summer, probably early fall. As far as the OPEB trust, to my knowledge, the actual terms of the OPEB trust was passed by the authorization to establish an OPEB trust was authorized by council, but the terms itself have still not been defined. But council took action on that, so that was a step in the right direction too.
Yeah, Kathy, did you?
Do you have any Dan, that might actually published? It seems it's been a time that we've been talking about this.
I'm sorry, did she break up for anybody else? I didn't hear that question.
Yeah, she's cutting out. Kathy, could you repeat the question?
Yeah. Do you have any idea of the time frame for the actual establishment of OPEB? We've been talking about it for
I don't have an
a long
update.
time at this point.
I don't.
Any other questions? I personally was curious, how are the discussions going, and what are the thoughts for the American Rescue Plan Act monies?
Well, I mean, there were a lot of discussions and ideas batted around publicly and internally in the last several weeks. And of course, there was an election last week that will have an impact on things as well. So the interim final rule just came out a couple weeks ago, which gave a little bit more definition of what are permissible uses and what the funds could be used for. And I think that, the process of how they're going to be deployed is going to be playing out over the next few weeks. But there's no further insight, no defined plans as of right now.
I would assume, given what you said about the next administration, that there would be some way to engage President Williams in those discussions. And certainly if there was a way that we could be a part of those discussions, even just to be flies on walls, we'd appreciate it.
Sure, absolutely.
Any other questions of Dan? You've got an easy crowd today, Dan. Our next topic is to talk about how we react. I think Dan laid out fairly clearly that the city would take into account all of the grammatical, clarification concerns that we had, but that, if I understand you correctly, any of the policy pieces you would prefer just to leave as is, allowing clarification and development as the next administration takes over.
That's correct.
And so by virtue of that, the process would be the city would actually present a final version along with the certification by the mayor that the budget is in order. And then we, the ICA, would seek the opinion of the controller to make sure that he agrees with the numbers, the projections, the assumptions that were made. And then we would have a response if there were still issues, or we could vote on it at the next meeting. Am I missing something? Looking around.
No, you got it right.
Okay. Are there any other pieces of information that people feel like we need in order to move forward from the city? I mean, we did get 4 or 5 pages of comments. Are there any specifics that you would want to bring to Dan's attention at this time?
Can I ask Dan, when you talk about sort of leaving some policy matters and not not getting too much into them now versus next year, how does that relate to some of the initiatives in the plan relating to the new ERP system, increasing collections and neighborhood services fund, some of those types of matters that are currently already in the 2020 plan and they're in the 2021 plan? Is it an expectation for us and for the ICA to see those initiatives that are current commitments, to see those continue to be executed?
I mean, the city is still obviously going to be pushing towards improving collections in the neighborhood services fund and implement the IT system. Those efforts are not going to cease. That's for sure. I don't anticipate commenting on those matters too much more than what's already in the plan.
So we do expect those matters to continue to be executed going forward.
Improving collections and implementing the IT system.
Mm-hmm.
Doug?
So Dan, some of the things that we presented were suggestions, recommendations, and so on. And I understand how that plays out against the upcoming change in administration. But there were a few things that we presented as simple questions and requests for additional information. And will you be able to respond to those?
Probably most of them. I mean, when I've gone through the comments a couple times now, clarifications, like questions about why is 2021 expenses more than 2022 expenses when there's a growth rate. That's a pretty those kind of clarifications are pretty easy to make. Was there anything in particular that you had a question about?
Well, no, I appreciate your answer. It sounds like you'll get in the direction of some of the things we're looking at, but the one in particular that I had noticed was the out year added on the projections for the NSF showed that the draw from reserve went back up again pretty significantly.
Sure. Well, and the neighborhood services fund, we project out pretty significant fund balances in that fund, and the idea is to keep it in balance, but also maintain fund balance levels that meet the minimum target that is established in the plan. We acknowledge that there are a couple variables in order to even get to that point in 2025, which is improving collection rates, which we think is realistic and achievable, but there's frankly a degree of uncertainty with that. We also look to securing increased grant revenues to support capital needs in the fund, which again is realistic. It's been recommended by the ICA. I've gotten the feeling that you'd want to see the city be more aggressive, and even in terms of putting in our projections for revenue support for some of these initiatives. But you don't have a grant until you got a grant. So for that reason, we project out fund balances that are well above the target level that's established in the plan, and leave out in the 5th year of the plan the possibility that there is a decrease in fund balance. Frankly, right now there are no fee increases other than the ones already with the 2 partnership incorporated into the plan. In simple algebra, will say if your costs keep going up and your revenues are flat, eventually the lines are going to cross. So eventually, if fund balance reaches to a point that it's testing those minimum levels we're talking about, and you're having a reduction in the fund balance, or just a reduction in the fund balance, the city would have to take a harder look at a fee increase.
And we just want to make sure that the citizens of Harrisburg aren't unduly affected based on the costs that have been taken on relative to the 3 intermunicipal agreements. Other questions? I would still hope that we, and I don't know if you've had any success in recruiting the community service aid positions, but keeping track of what those benchmarks are, what the actual assignments are for these individuals, and how they will help the police. Specifically, will we see a decrease in overtime, better de-escalation, those sorts of things. I'm assuming that's a program you'll still stick with this year.
Yes, no changes that I'm aware of.
Anyone else? Okay. That brings us to other business. Is there anything that the board has on their mind that we haven't discussed, that we should discuss, that we should be considering? If not, it could be a record meeting, because we will now turn to Jeffrey to find out if there are any public comments. And you're on mute.
There are not any public comments, but when you asked the other business question, I was just trying to confirm the date of our June meeting is the 23rd of June. I will, okay, that I had a conflict when we originally set that schedule, but it seems the conflict has been resolved. So look forward to seeing you all on June 23rd, in person or on Zoom.
Right.
Jeff, can I see Neil's on. Can I ask Neil a quick question?
Available.
If Neil, if you would, can you give me a quick update on the Commonwealth Court and the plan there? So we can get the authorization to sign that agreement?
Sure, we haven't filed yet. The judge had asked ourselves and the counsel for the Commonwealth to come in for a conference, and it sort of starts to blur together. I think it was the beginning of last week or the end of the week before. She has changed the process a little bit, because this is really the first ever type of hearing this has been, where it's ending an Act 47 plan that was also in receivership, so both in front of the agency and the court. So now it is going to be a dual administrative judicial proceeding, where both the Secretary of DCED and the judge both preside. And because there are a number of stakeholders involved, I sort of have to take that around the table to get everyone's comfort level, but it's what the court wants. So I'm assuming everyone's going to say, yes, that's fine with them. But we do have a number of stakeholders that have to sign on. So the expectation is in July to be done, to file in June and be done in July. But sometimes in court, you can't really control the flow. We don't know what restrictions there are going to still be to the number of people in the courtroom, things like that. And we don't know how many will want to be there based on the different stakeholders. So it's sort of some logistical issues are going to be there. But we want a document they've all signed off on before it goes in front of the judge, just so everyone's on the same page. But with expectations, we file in June, have a proceeding in July, and be done. That's the expectation.
Okay. And then
I will,
presumably based on that, once that hearing occurs, administrative proceeding occurs, then we'll sign our agreement.
30 days after, when the court orders a final unappealable order.
Unappealable order, sure. Okay.
Right. So that's the target. And the council passed last night the concurrent required Act 24 ordinance that was the same agreement as the other one for the resolution. So that process is now done as of last night. It's got to be signed by the mayor still, but as a bill. But Act 124 had an ordinance requirement. So it's moving in the direction it has to. And we've heard no objections from anybody to date from where we were going.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. And I can tell you, so yesterday they introduced a concurrent resolution to partially terminate and partially extend the emergency declaration of the governor in the House. The Senate did not as of yesterday. So part of it's extended through October, part of it will terminate upon the Senate and the House voting on the same resolution. It's a little vague what's extended and what's terminated, but so
How helpful.
yes, very helpful. Yes, we're trying to figure out how to re-advertise public meetings ourselves and figure out which things we're allowed to do. So
Right.
Anything else for the good of the order? Not, Neil. Could I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Ralph. A second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? I don't think so. Thank you all. Carla, this is one of the shortest meetings, so you could be a good luck charm. But we're really glad to have you and look forward to answering any questions you may have as a result of this meeting or any of the massive volumes of information we've given you.
Thank you very much.
So with that, I think we can all say so long.
Night, everyone.
Almost June.
Thank you, everyone. Bye now.